rewards that are yet to be. Through this work, through this love, through this reading, we unify the Black print, the work. Collectively, courageously, we're here today. Breathing in some sage or whatever it is around you, the air, the prana, life. That's what makes us present. These words, this heart, this mind, that's us, I say. Amen, Amun, Unk, Uja, Sinemnet, Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe, how you doing, sister?
I'm doing well, Brother Tut. How are you? That was a beautiful opening. Thank you.
Oh man, I'm well. I am here. Week 4.
Yes, we made it to the month mark. Wow.
We is cooking.
Right.
It still feels like we still getting started to me, you know?
Just scratching the surface, just barely getting into it.
Yes. How you doing? How are things on your side?
Good. I mean, the East Oakland Grocery Co-op we're making moves. I don't know if y'all saw the article that Berkeley Side published. If you haven't, it's definitely a really well written article. So we're coming off of that momentum right now. I'm still building.
What
Yeah.
did the article talk about?
It was just showcasing. It was an interview with myself and a couple of the cohort members, Aaron and Daniel, who I think is on live right now.
Shout out.
Just talking about what brought us to do this work and why it's important, and just telling the world what we're up to.
Oh, that's beautiful. You can find it. I'll definitely share it on the page, on the Repair Nations page, so folks can read up on it.
Hey, there goes Daniel. What's good?
What's up, bro? Shout out, man.
What up?
Yeah, East Oakland Grocery Collective. That's what's up. Feeding the community.
Yes. And how about you? How are things going on your end with your work?
Oh man, it's co-ops are growing. We got a co-op growing out in Richmond. The Susu Repair Nation. We're gonna start that on the 1st. So that's gonna be great. The ideas that's gonna come out of that. I already know what I'm gonna do with my portion of the Susu.
Ooh, okay.
And then just the conversation. People are very interested. And it seems like we're kind of going back to normal. I don't know if that's still not in the sense of like going to the store without masks. But people, I know our people are starting to be more like interested in like doing something, like being out or connecting, or like, all right, what's next? So I'm excited about that.
Hey, shout out to Aaron, East Oakland Grocery Cooperative member. And Greg mentioned that he heard there's a newspaper that wants to be a co-op. So, really? And that's been coming up in our meetings, is how we need our own media outlets, our own media network. I don't know about you, but like social media and all these Zoom calls be glitching at the wrong times for us. So we need our own outlets and our own ways of telling the news and our stories from our places.
That's what's up.
Yep. And that feeds right into the topic of today's reading.
Man, for real, you want to step us into it?
Sure. Yeah. So we're on page 53. I'm going to be talking about the populist movement today, and coming off of the conversation about the Cooperative Workers of America, CWA, and that history, and that directly feeds into the populist movement that is going to start to emerge and grow coming off of that, actually. So the definition of the populist movement is associated with a political stance usually, but it's the juxtaposition, or like the comparison of the people, which are usually portrayed as the good, versus the elite, which are usually portrayed as the self-serving, the ones that don't serve the interests of the people.
Right.
And so, yeah, just to give some context of how this section is going to flow. So here we are in the late 1880s, and the populist movement developed out of the experiences, including the failures of the early unions and the growing National Farmers Alliance, as well as other grassroots farmers and agrarian movements, such as the Patrons of Husbandry, better known as Grage. So in 1877, this growing National Farmers Alliance were 3 million strong, and they opened their first cooperative intended to be a part of a network of organized agricultural cooperatives. And the Farmers Alliance in South Carolina that opened up actually emerged only a few months after the demise of the CWA in 1887. And also centered its efforts around cooperativism. So we're seeing how the CWA launched a lot of populist theory and action, especially in the South. And so the Farmers Alliance, where the members were predominantly land-owning farmers, and they had a lot more resources to draw upon than rural Black day laborers, who made up the bulk of the membership of the CWA, right? So we're seeing this shift in membership. We're seeing this adaptation of cooperative theory, and now being adopted. We're talking about groups outside of the Black community starting to form and come together, right? So it says, in the face of rising costs, falling prices, and rural isolation, white and Black farmers in the South in the late 1880s were joining farmers' fraternal organizations. The Southern Farmers Alliance emerged as the most significant agricultural organization in the South, but it did not accept Negro membership, and at best promoted separate Black chapters. So we still see there's the segregation.
No question.
And so going towards the bottom, excuse me, of this page, it speaks a little bit more about the Southern Farmers Alliance, and African Americans formed their own organization, the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union, known as the CFNACU, which we're actually going to talk about in tomorrow's session. Excuse me. But they worked with the Southern Farmers Alliance, but they remain separate. So there's still like we said, that segregation, but there's spaces for collaborative conversations.
No question.
There were disparate Black agrarian groups before the CFNACU. It's a long acronym.
Right. You know how we do.
Right. Such as the Colored Farmers Association in Texas, the Colored Grange of Tennessee, and the Negro Alliance of Arkansas.
1882.
The Mississippi Union Leagues were also, quote unquote, hatcheries of radical economic experiments. I thought that was a really interesting quote. Hatcheries of radical economic experiments. That's really? The way they talked about what our predecessors were doing.
Right. Man.
And so to wrap this page up, the Colored Agricultural Wheels expressed Black populism in the mid 1800s. So this is where we see just solely Black populism starting to be talked about.
Right.
And Colored Wheels were nonpartisan agrarian groups that focused on economic cooperation while pressing for economic and political reforms. Here goes the political stance, right? Now we're getting into politics. Now we're getting into challenging white supremacist structures, right?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Deli, see you in here. What's good, fam?
What's love?
All right. So moving into page 54, where we start getting into the heart of Black populism. And so in the 1880s, depressed economic conditions for poor farmers led them to join radical agrarian organizations. As we saw on the previous page, these were starting to form, especially after the CWA was dismantled. Radicals preached solidarity for poor Black and white farmers. The
Right.
Populist Party tried to protect African Americans to ensure the equal application of voting procedures in 1892. I think
Okay.
Greg mentioned this last week when we were, I think around Juneteenth, about the stance of Democrats, right? In present days, we associate them with like liberalism and progressivism. But as we see here, it says Democrats forced African Americans who worked for them to vote Democrat and used riots and murder to maintain political power. So here we see an ulterior motive for integration, right? For this standing in solidarity together. Is it true solidarity?
Right.
Right.
See, and this still has to do a little bit with the white saviorism, where
Yes.
we have a particular party. This would be considered a third party group, the Populist Party, and they were trying to come around and trying to protect African Americans, while the Democrats, on the other hand, were forcing us through terrorist measures to go on their side,
Right.
and even on the flip side, Republicans in that time would be trying to, okay, we'll give you guys this, but we on the back end we want that. We want to free you guys, but we're going to put the 13th Amendment to get still from some of you guys. We're going to free some. So it's always been this, they're either going to be totally against us and try to oppress us, or they're going to say, hey, we're going to press them on the back end. Let's give them some leeway and oppress them on the back end so we can benefit. And I just keep seeing this played out all throughout history, and this was in the 1800s, family. So it's like we talked about it way in the beginning. Is there such thing as black and white solidarity truly? And how do we make that manifest in a benefit for us? I don't know about y'all, but I think it's time to be a little bit of selfish here. We gotta start looking out, man. Mama Mia said the Dems haven't changed. Hey, what somebody say? A slow Joe said, "No, man, just don't kill him. Shoot him in the leg."
Right.
Come on, man.
Right. It's that wolf in sheep's clothing, right? They try to be our friend, but right. So it says here the populace feared that they would not always be able to control African Americans. Here's that word control. Right?
Wait. No, hold on. A few sentences before it said the Populist Party tried to protect us, right? From the Democrats. So this is the same party that was supposed to be for us, including us, trying to figure out our economic situation, make it better, trying to put us in a better political situation. But right here, I didn't want to interrupt you, but you said the Populist what?
Feared that they would not always be able to control African Americans if they permitted to behave as allies and not subordinates. And they also feared Democratic control of Black voters and efforts to disfranchise poor whites. Poor whites, the planter class, and industrialists joined together in forcing African Americans out of the political arena in 1890.
Wow.
Here goes Greg saying that flip was quick, right? Yes.
It's always in the back of their mind. That's what I'm saying. Like they got this fear of us, gaining this control and wanting to do to them what they do. We don't even have it in us.
No.
Oh, bro, we just want to do it for ourselves, man, family. And this is man, this is sad. This is actually messed up.
And like you said, brother, like it's historical. This is centuries and centuries of repetitive history just framed in different ways, right? And so yeah, I mean, and as we move through this section, this writer who was doing this research also observed that the inherent conflict between the poor African American agrarian base of Black populism, drawn from the approximately 92% of the rural Southern Black population that was virtually landless. Okay, this is where land sovereignty comes in, y'all.
Wow.
And the relatively affluent white leadership of the populist movement would continue in the early 1890s. Violence and intimidation were frequently used to suppress the growth of Black populism as the movement spearheaded plantation strikes.
Plantation strikes. And see, this people like, man, why you talking about the separatism? Why are you spilling so much hate? I'm saying, like, we have a history of trusting and bending over backwards and giving our last and just holding on to a group, a class, if you want to say, of individuals in this country that speak to us with a split tongue. Like they speak to us. And so you've been in conversations at nonprofits. You've been in conversations at the grocery, just like belittle you in your face. And if you didn't know, the history of what's going on here, you would try to take it, or you wouldn't. You're kind of like
question yourself a little bit too. You're just like, what am I doing?
But we out here spitting this fire now and telling the truth, and people can all calm down, brother. It can't be calm. We're not trying to incite nothing. What we're trying to do is ignite something within ourselves. That pride that we don't need that, bro. We need each other. And it's nothing else they can do for us.
No.
Except for get out of our way. But yeah, let's continue.
So the researcher here, Woods, describes this period as one in which African Americans wanted to dismantle the plantation regime, establish self-governing communities, and become landowners, both individually and collectively. By the 1880s, a mass movement of Blacks and whites had arisen under the populist banner. Populists identified Northern industrial capitalists and Southern plantation monopolists as enemies of cooperatively based community development. African Americans pushed their community development agenda by building schools, establishing new towns, whole ass towns, y'all, buying land. Here we go with land again. Free the people, free the land. And protesting the denial of civil and human rights, even though they were essentially voteless and increasingly segregated. Out of necessity, Wood observes, many of those who remained in the South focused again on the land and labor reform agenda by organizing rural unions to end peonage, to improve wages, and to end the thievery associated with year-end settlements.
Right. We know the land better than they did. The so-called owners.
And we brought crops over, right? We brought things over. We brought the magic over. We brought the seeds over to cultivate, and make it our own. And that's why when we talk about solidarity between Black and Indigenous people, especially in the United States, especially in America, it goes back to land connections, y'all. It goes back to the rooted physical environment that was stolen from Indigenous folks and, built up by stolen and enslaved African, ancestors. So that let's talk about that solidarity, not this like populist solidarity that quote unquote happened back then. That usage of the word really taints our image of it. It taints our image of integration versus segregation.
There you go. Indigenous solidarity. That's it. That's it, man.
Because we as descendants of African people are indigenous to this earth.
Oh, there we go.
World, man.
There we go. Talk about it.
Don't even get me started.
Man. You know what I'm saying? We knew what to do before they had a shoe. Our house with a window in it. Come on, man. Let's go. And it's nothing but love, man. When you got that love, it's nothing. Here we share, trade and barter. We didn't need the low mighty dollar, but that's a whole nother.
Everybody had their role, right? Everybody had their role in the village.
Right.
So to wrap up this page, just to finish it up, it says, So this is all the movement building. Oh, Mama Mia said seeds, medicine, yes. Original people, ashe. So this is setting the stage for the CFNACU, the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union, which I'm really excited to talk about next session. And this is the context in which the CFNACU matured and operated. It tried to promote political action among African Americans to ensure economic opportunity and stability. So we know the importance of economic power, and we knew our positioning in that realm.
Of course.
Dominated by small landowners, this movement engaged in independent political parties while simultaneously building an economic infrastructure for a new society. The Black populist movement was heavily influenced by the attempts of racially integrated unions to develop a cooperative commonwealth in the late 19th century. And just we're up at the top of page 55, just finishing up this section. The CFNACU pulled together elements of the Black populist movement in the 1880s and 90s. The colored alliances also continued the cooperative development that the Knights of Labor began. From the beginning, the CFNACU presented itself as a mutual benefit organization devoted to improving the lives of Black farmers and agrarian laborers through education and economic cooperation. Its members became as militant as the Knights of Labor and led some of the most ambitious strikes and boycotts, which made Black populism even more of a threat to the establishment. And that closes the section about the populist movement in the late 1800s. Whew. How you feeling, Brother Tut, after that one?
Man, I feel politically in charge now. Been having some interesting conversations with family, trying to figure out how they're going to vote this time around.
Right.
And there's, I'm just tired of giving the options that they offer us, that they choose to give us. Right. I'm all about recreating. So yes. there's other parties to research, and there's also parties we can start.
That part.
So I'm feeling I have more information to share with people. It's more than just Democrat and Republican. Yeah. And we can really conversate. If you really want to look for somebody other than Trump and Biden, there's other options. You don't have to take what they give us, family, at all. You don't have to just work at a job or be corporate or nonprofit. There's other options. There's cooperatives. There's businesses that's thriving under that banner. So yeah, I just love it. So every week, every day, I'm coming back with more ammo to get to my family on the front line.
Right. It's like the age of innovation, right? We can dream and build a world we and our ancestors may have never seen before, that we've only dreamed of. And I'm, every session, every meeting I have with the East Oakland Grocery Co-op it's that ignition that you mentioned, right? That ignition, that light, just it's that driving factor. And I'm happy that we get to share this with y'all and with the community and with the world.
Man, no question. Shout out East Oakland Grocery Collective. Everybody doing the work. Everybody that came through today. Everybody ambitiously imperfect. Hands clap. Anita was upset. She said, yes, she's been looking into it, the third-party system. Melophonic, mad love. Y'all already know. Everybody that's in here. We wouldn't be doing this without y'all. And please, if y'all looking to get more information on things that's going on, connect with Black co-ops. Start your own family co-op. DM us. Yes. We got the knowledge. We will share. We will connect you with whoever we need to connect you with, because it's all about the duocracy, like my brother said. This is the Black print right here, and we only do chapter 2. Come on, let's go.
Ashe.
Most definitely.
All right, family. Well, we'll catch you same Black time, same Black place